Hello and welcome to Do the Impossible with Jason and Stephen, the podcast that seeks to inspire and amaze you. And now please welcome your hosts, Jason Michaels and Stephen Bargatze. All right, welcome everybody to Do the Impossible with Jason and Stephen. My name is Jason Michaels. I am your host, and my co-host is sitting right next to me.
Stephen Bargatze, who's not sweating like Jason.
I tell you what, I don't know why I'm sweating. I guess I have this strange urge, like when people come over, I feel like I'm supposed to have everything perfect before you even get here, and I've been running around like crazy trying to get everything set up. This is our very first podcast.
Yeah, I bet that won't be a surprise. I think people's probably going, surely this is their first one.
This cannot possibly be. They haven't been doing this for very long. It's funny because I've been wanting to do some sort of a program based on the subject matter for a long time, but I haven't known what it is that we should do. And then this idea really came about within, the last week. And so we're throwing this first one together. And I don't say we're throwing it together like we haven't put a lot of time and effort into it, but it feels like you messaged me. And I woke up this morning, there was a message, and it said, "Hey, I can come over and do a podcast if you want to." I was like,
I messaged him last night. He went to bed at 8:30.
I was asleep. I did. I went to bed at 8:30. So let's dive into what the podcast is about and what you can expect in today's episode and in future episodes. So Do the Impossible podcast is designed to be an uplifting, inspiring podcast where Stephen and I interview different people who have overcome difficulties, hardships, what I like to refer to as quote unquote impossible challenges. We use the term impossible very loosely. Basically, it means something that is overwhelming, something that feels impossible. Certainly, I don't know that there are that many things that are actually impossible to overcome. But
then they wouldn't be overcoming them.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
But they
sounds
feel
like a good title for a book, though.
But they feel impossible to overcome at the moment. And then, so we're going to interview some folks who have some really inspirational stories, and hopefully take away some. Learn a lesson or two or three things on how those of us out in the real world can overcome our own impossible challenges.
And as this thing goes on, and we kind of have envisioned that it will, and if you know somebody that has a story that needs to be shared or can be talked about or something like that, be sure to contact Jason, and we'll have all that information at the end of this show, and contact us and send us their information, and we'll see if we can set it up.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I wanted to make sure we mentioned is that we're going to have some people who are extraordinary at what they do, some world-class entertainers, motivational speakers, people who this is what they do. They go out and they perform and they get in front of people and they know how to communicate. But I think it's just as important that we have people who have a normal 9-to-5 job that they may not be used to standing up or presenting in front of a group of people or even communicating to a large group of people, but it's just as important because I learned a long time ago through you, I learned that everybody at some point in life is dealing with something that feels extremely difficult. It's very personal, and whether it's something like a disability or whether it's a depression or there's just a number of different things that it could be. But at some point in life, one of the things that I learned is that everybody deals with something.
I would agree with that. And I think, and that's what we want to just kind of contact, and just hopefully people that what they've done to overcome their obstacles in life, right, and can help us or help our listeners. And it's going to help me do even a better job. And like, I probably shouldn't hit my microphone when I say me. I'm going to learn.
But just as important as it being uplifting, we want it to be fun and lighthearted. So I think we're probably going to have some really poignant, powerful moments, but we also want it to be, fun and entertaining, because that's kind of, that's where you and I started, both in the entertainment world. And so and we're going to get into your story.
And I drug you into that.
You drug me screaming and kicking. I did not want to do it, and I'll tell that story a little bit in a minute. But the first couple of episodes, we want you to kind of meet the hosts of the show and hear our stories. And then we've already got some really cool people lined up for some future episodes, people with really powerful stories. But we're both entertainers. Give us
So if
give
you
us
don't
the
care about us and find out who or what we think, just skip to number 3. Episode 3 is where you want to start.
episode 3. If
That's
you don't
where
care
we
who the hosts are.
get- Yeah.
So let's do that. Since we're going to dive into each other's stories, we're going to interview each other in the first 2 episodes. Let's do the real quick 30 to 60 second version of who we are. And so, I mean, tell us you're a professional magician. Tell us what we need to know.
That's it. I've been doing entertainment since probably 1976, which is a long, long time. And when I get into my story, we'll tell you how I got involved in entertainment. But I was in an accident when I was young, bitten by a dog in the face, and so here, and it left me with a speech impediment. And because of that, I was put in special ed classes a lot. And so I just my little obstacles. And after we lined up some of these people, I am so low on the bottom. If I was comparing my obstacles to what other people have gone through, and even what I think Jason has gone through. But for me, and as a kid, it's everything. I thought I was a retard growing up. I just thought I was stupid. I thought I couldn't do anything. And so it was just overcoming that, and ended up being a guy that wouldn't talk and was real shy and real quiet, to find out that now I do comedy, and I've been all over the world doing magic.
Right. And your son is also a comedian.
And he always has to bring up my son as if my career is not good enough.
You love to talk about Nate. What are you talking about?
I like Nate, Derek, and Abigail. All my kids I'm very proud of.
Absolutely.
But in the entertainment world, you probably most likely would have heard of Nate Bargatze. He has a Netflix show called The Tennessee Kid. He's got one called The Stand Up, season 1. And he's in a couple, and he's just filmed his second not Netflix special that'll be coming out next year. So make sure to contact him and watch all those shows. He owes me a lot of money, and so it helps when you watch all that. And no, we're very proud of the work he did and the work that he does in the entertainment business. He has a really good outlook on comedy, but we grew up in a very comical home, no doubt.
And I want to point out the term retard was a term that was used back when it's not, we know that
I'm not
in
Larry the Cable Guy.
today's world you're not supposed to say that, but that was a common term when I was in school, and
very common when I went to school.
And that's something you were called.
Yes, no doubt about it. I was called that all the time. My class was called that.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, I understand. I know what it's like to be called those names and to believe that.
Right.
And stuff.
Right.
So that was more than 30 seconds, but Jason.
No, it's good.
Let's give you, you're going to give your 30 second, and then we're going to get into the long one.
You know what? Let's just, I'll just very briefly, I'm a professional magician. I started doing that, not as a professional. Magic started as a hobby in high school, and then I ended up working for a magician named Brett Daniels right out of college, and then after several years of doing that, I did that on and off for more than a decade, actually, but after several years of working for him full-time, I tried to figure out the business side of it. I had no interest whatsoever about talking about my challenges. I was just very focused on trying to be a professional magician, trying to be a professional entertainer, trying to figure out how to get people to hire me. And then, and like you said a minute ago, you drug me into really being willing to speak about what I have had to grow up with, the neurological disorder that I have. And little by little, it changed my life. And now I go out and I share my story and still use magic and entertainment to sort of illustrate some of my points, to educate people and to have fun. Because I hang out with a guy who's a professional comedian, I continually dip my toe in the waters of comedy, and I find that quite challenging. I don't want to say it's impossible, but man, it is scary. So I have played around with a little bit of stand-up comedy, and now here we are today, putting together this first podcast.
Once again, I'm dragging him into something. We tried it. We're starting this during the pandemic, and it's November, and I remember thinking, well, we can just wait this thing out,
Sure.
and everything's going to be back to normal. And then I kept telling Jason, you're going to have to start buying some equipment. You're going to have to start doing Zoom shows, or we're going to have to reinvent ourselves and rethink stuff. And this is really what this is. We don't want to waste the money that he's spent so far. And I'm 65 years old. I'm not buying this stuff. I don't want to know how it works. And but I'm glad that he is, and I think it's important that
To spread the message.
yeah, and it's important to take steps to reach more people.
Well, and I think that's the thing that excites me the most. I wrote a book, and we'll talk about that several years ago. The reason I did that was because, I was I'm not old, but I'm up there compared to like some of the young people who are getting into entertainment and stuff there. I'm in my mid 40s. And at the time I was just thinking to myself, I've learned some interesting lessons. I'd like to leave this to share with other people. And I think this is our opportunity to, this is our opportunity to share our message, but you have because you've been out there speaking longer than I have, you have a huge network of people that that have not similar stories, but uplifting stories. You've met a lot of people, whether they're professional athletes or people in the military or people in ministry, things like that have really powerful stories. And so I'm going to certainly call all my friends, but I think we're going to call all your friends too, because you have more of them. But and it's important to get these messages out there. But that's what we're doing here. So let's dive in on today's first episode, which is, I guess, an interview.
All right, and since this is really all of his stuff and his idea, we thought that we would start off with the interview of Jason.
Okay.
And we are just, this is not coffee, just to let anybody know.
Why does it matter whether you're drinking coffee?
Well, I just think it's important. I did a podcast called Rock and Roast.
Okay.
Ben Bearden and Caleb Imboden. Very good, fun podcast to do. And these guys, they get people that drink coffee, and they come in and they talk about their favorite coffees and everything. I don't drink coffee. Never have and never will.
You've never had coffee?
No, terrible. I've taken oh, and I've tried that candy. That's horrible. So we ended up with chocolate milk, and then he goes, do you drink hot chocolate? And I go, yeah, sure. Who don't? And he said, well, what's your favorite on the podcast? He asked me my gourmet chocolate brand, and I said the little can with the bunny on it. And, I'm just a very simple guy. So, but since it's early in the morning, Jason made me some tea in my Djibouti.
Your Djibouti mug. I am drinking coffee, and I have my Seymour Johnson Air Force Base mug. And
we traveled all these bases, and we'll be talking about that. I know sometime. I didn't know you were buying mugs.
Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, I did a show there, and that was actually a gift. And I bought this one on the last trip to Djibouti, Africa. And so we can tell the story behind the mugs, and we'll have to, if you're watching, but because the podcast is, it's both an audio podcast. We're also shooting video, which it will be uploaded to the website, so you can both watch as well as listen. We're gonna have some Easter eggs in the dual. It may have something to do with our mugs.
Send us a mug.
Send us a mug.
I'll drink out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's dive in.
It won't be coffee, but all right. Well, Jason, if I was to interview you, I know that we can almost start when we met, but let's take a step back even farther than that. First of all, you mentioned your I can't pronounce what you just said. The new whatever the
book. Oh, neurological disorder.
Yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to find there's a lot of words I can't say. And I can't say that one. I call it Tourette syndrome.
It is called Tourette syndrome.
Let's start where you first realized what was happening to you. And because I know because I've heard you talking several times that it took them a while to quite figure out exactly what it was.
So my first memory of my first memory of dealing with Tourette syndrome, I didn't know what it was. And big surprise, everybody, I have Tourette syndrome. So that's the big reveal.
Wow.
Okay. So, my first memory of that was, the way it comes out as twitches or movements. They're uncontrollable. They're rapid and repetitive. What's interesting is that as we just have a conversation, I'm sure they'll come out more, and people watching the video will be able to see the little tics. But typically when I perform, they don't come out very much. But when I'm in a more relaxed setting with people that I know and trust, they kind of come out a little bit more. But my first...
before we even do that, because if you're watching this, they're not going to show up that much.
Not a lot.
This is new, and any time that I've noticed that when Jason's focusing and we're doing something new, they don't show up near as much as when he just relaxed off camera or when he's that. So we're going to just show this a little quick video.
All right, I'll throw that in there. So this video is a video of I was doing a commercial. We were shooting a video on a tour that I was on last year, and this is what it looks like when my Tourette tics really come out.
All right. Yep. All right, Jay. So, first of all, just sort of be like, hey, I'm Jason Michaels. You know, I've been doing magic ever since I was a little kid, and that sort of thing. Just sort of give me a little bit.
All right.
So really short, like little background. Yeah, you're not looking at the camera. You're looking at me. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Jason Michaels. I started magic when I was 16 years old because I wanted to learn a few card tricks.
All right. Well, that's the Jason I know.
Yeah, very.
That I grew in love.
It's
but now we'll pick back up to where you were, where you really didn't know what was happening to you, and it wasn't that severe in the beginning necessarily, but just what was.
So I was. I'm thinking I was probably 6 or 7 years old. I was in the car next to my dad. We were driving across town, and I just kept it was like this. I was rubbing my chin against my collarbone. This has been one of my like signature tics. This is one of the ones that I do, and it always comes back at some point. I was just rubbing my chin against my collarbone. I was doing it over and over again, and it was incredibly frustrating because I didn't know why I was doing it. And even at age 6 or 7, I remember thinking that I couldn't stop doing it. And so it was, having this experience of being out of control of your movements of your body was very frustrating as a young person. And my family... My family have been wonderful my entire life. My mom and dad noticed something was up, and they started taking me to doctors. We would go to, I remember going to a psychologist, or maybe it was a psychiatrist, but it was a mental health doctor. And we saw some different doctors throughout the years. And I don't know that anybody really specifically nailed it until we went and saw, I was 12 or 13 years old, and we went and saw a pediatric neurologist in Nashville, and she was able to say, "Oh, you have Tourette syndrome," and that's when we put a label on it, and we realized, okay, this is what it is. Let's learn about Tourette syndrome so that we understand. I mean, I knew what it was because I was doing it, but this was our opportunity to say, okay, here is what it is. Here's what the studies say. Here's what you can
What do
expect.
they say I have?
Yeah, what do the experts say that I have? And then how do you treat such a thing? Which is probably one of the most frustrating parts about having Tourette syndrome. And the reason I say that is because when I was being treated as a teenager is really when because of all the hormones that are firing through your body, that's when you have the most tics. And then they say as you grow older, the tics kind of fade a bit, which is true for some people, not true for others. But what happens is they would put me on a medication, and it takes a while to ramp up the medication to get to a dosage that they think will be powerful enough to like actually treat the tics. But the problem with that is that the tics of Tourette syndrome, they wax and they wane, which simply means that sometimes naturally you have a lot of tics. And other times, naturally, you do not have a lot of tics. And it has nothing to do with the medicine that you're on. So you might be in a period of time when you don't have a lot of tics, and then you start taking this medicine, and you're not sure if it's the medicine helping you or if it's just naturally you don't have a lot of tics going on. So in addition to having to ramp up the medicine and get to a proper dosage, you then have to be on it long enough to see whether or not it's helping you and whether or not you're willing to put up with the side effects of the different medicines. And then if you decide it's not working, you have to slowly wean yourself off the medicine so that you can do the same thing over again with another medicine. So, I remember just thinking, what is the point? Because we found different medicines had different effects. Some of them were more effective than others, but it was a very frustrating.
Well, how does it affect you as a teenager to go through middle school and high school, knowing that you have Tourette syndrome now? I mean, what was some of the disadvantages of this?
Well, so because the tics come out unexpectedly, and they are repetitive, which means it's not just a tick and then it's gone. It means that the tick happens over and over and over and over again, and it might happen for a couple of seconds. It could be a little bit longer than that. It could be a little bit less than that. Because they're unexpected, they startle people.
Yes.
And people will literally not know how to respond. I've had it happen plenty of times when people are near me and a tick comes out and they're so startled that I guess it's their own defense mechanism. They'll say something to you, and it's something meant to cut the tension and make themselves feel comfortable again. The problem with that is, as someone with this disorder, all I really wanted to do was fit in. I just wanted to be like everybody else. I didn't want somebody pointing out, oh, well, what was that? I don't need especially as a kid, I didn't need the smart comments. I didn't need people saying things that maybe even on purpose, saying things that were hurtful, because, kids can be pretty brutal to other kids when they find someone who's different.
Well, let's go to that. Because for this kid, somebody that's watching, I mean, what did you said you just, I mean, what should be the correct response? Because I do think that sometimes people laugh or they say something because they don't know what else. It's not what they expected. And when something like this happens, what do you do? What would you say is the correct response? And I know you have to be aware too of because people have not a clue. I didn't have a clue that what Tourette syndrome was until I met you.
Right.
And so I had no answers. I just thought, man, somebody should get this kid.
Yeah. What's wrong with this dude?
Yeah.
Right. It's a tough question because there's one side of it that one side of it is on the person who sees the tick, but then there's another side of it that has to be on me. So I always looked at Tourette syndrome. You're going to be shocked when I say this, but I'm a little bit of a control freak. And,
oh, really?
I like to be in control. And you know what? It probably is because my life has been spent out of control. Certain elements of my life have been spent out of control. But I like to have control. I like to feel like I have control over my career. I like to feel I have control over my just in general. And so when the tics happen, I'm out of control, and I honestly was mortified. I'm not talking about embarrassed. I'm talking about so embarrassed by it that I could barely even talk to my family about it. I mean, barely. I mean, saying the words Tourette syndrome it was a spot of deep pain for me because I was so embarrassed by the fact that I didn't have control. I say that to say that part of it was on me. And I'm not trying to put down anybody who has a disability that feels that pain. I'm just simply saying that I had to own part of the fact that I have these tics and these twitches, and that's just how I'm made. And so when somebody said something, I could either be highly offended or even more embarrassed, or I could choose to say, you know what, this is just who I am, and this is just what happens. and choose to take some ownership over it. Now, as a kid, I didn't have that. In fact, that took me well into adulthood before I finally, and it took you to be a part of the process of getting me comfortable talking about Tourette's, to be willing to feel some power over the Tourette's instead of the Tourette syndrome tics having complete power over me. But I'll also say that the person who is surprised and who makes a comment, if it's a comment made just because they're startled, that's not really on them. I mean, that's because, oh my gosh, what was that? Now, if it's a comment that's made because they want to try to alienate me or somebody, or they want to laugh at me or make a joke about me or try to hurt my feelings, well, that says a lot about who that person is.
Yeah.
Being willing to laugh at somebody else's misfortune or whatever the situation
Might
is.
just mean that they're a comedian.
It could
We
be
have a
that.
friend, Rick Merrill, that just can't back off of the Tourette syndrome jokes.
I have learned to love Rick Merrill's Tourette syndrome jokes, and I now find them highly amusing.
Yeah. No, but again, and again, that goes to a person.
Yeah.
Because all the problems I had and everything was that, and even in my family, and I think it's part of what makes Nate Nate, and is that we laugh at things, that we look at the funny side of everything. Because what else can you do?
Yeah.
So if I don't care enough that I can laugh at myself and just go, well, that was just a crazy scene right there.
Yeah.
I'm just sorry it had to look.
It's almost as if the experience of life is worth laughing about.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And I would never done it to hurt anybody or hurt your feelings or anything like that. It was just my little way of making you normal. I mean, just like you're one of us. Yeah, I can laugh at you. I'm going to laugh at that. I'm going to laugh at myself. I'm going to mess up.
Right.
Like I can't pronounce that word we had earlier. And, people could say, well, that guy's an idiot. And they'd be right. But but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So as a teenager, so you're dealing with all this stuff. It had to be hard. Then tell me your performance, how you all of a sudden turned that into being a performer. And
Yeah, I took a speech and drama course, and because I just loved the idea of, like so many people, I love movies and I love to be entertained. And I always would sit in the movie theater and I would always dream of what it would be like to be up there on that movie screen. And I enrolled in speech and drama course because I was fascinated by the idea of standing up in front of a group of people. Now, I know that sounds crazy. Like when you stop and think about it, you're like, wait a minute, you have these tics. Why in the world would you even entertain that thought? And the simple fact of the matter is that didn't cross my mind at the time that I enrolled in the course. And being in the course, I really wasn't thinking about the Tourette syndrome tics. I decided to audition for what was called the junior senior play. It was for juniors and seniors. Okay, and I was a junior. And
I'm not that dumb, Jason.
and
I figured that part out right away. I had that one.
and I auditioned, and I got a role. In fact, I didn't just get a role; I got the main role, which
Wow.
as a junior was kind of shocking because you would have thought that maybe one of the seniors would have more stage time and be a better fit for that.
Well, it helped that your mom was the one picking the cast. No, that's not true.
That is not true. Although she would have thought that she thought I did a wonderful job. No, but what was weird is that when I stepped on the stage to play this character and to be in this play, the tics, for all intents and purposes, they were gone while I was on stage. It was almost like a magic trick. It's like, oh, they just disappeared for the time that he was in front of an audience. And I like to say when I do my motivational program, I like to say that I think maybe I wanted to be in that play so that people would applaud me for something that I could do instead of laughing at me for something I had no control over. Maybe it was like one of those like deep inside like motivations. But I'm on stage and it's going perfectly. I walk off stage. I am by myself or I'm home at the end of the night, and all the tics that I had suppressed come out. and they come out like twice as hard. That's the strange thing about Tourette syndrome, is that there are when I talk to people with Tourette's and they ask me, or especially when I talk to parents that have kids with Tourette's and they ask me if these are normal, is it normal for my child to do this? And there are so many strange sort of ways that Tourette's comes out. The fact that even though I say they're uncontrollable tics, it's like the level of focus that I have turns them off until I relax. And the moment that the focus goes away and the relaxation, and I'm just being me and I'm not trying to do anything in particular, it's like all of those that were suppressed like come back with like double the force.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's like the key thing is when I see that you're in the rest, when you're just letting everything go, the show's over, and that's when I've noticed it the most. Our story of meeting was based on seeing some of this same thing with you, because I saw Jason. We have what in the magic world is called magic conventions, where we get together with other magicians and we do shows for each other, have contests, things like that, and also learn from each other. And I was supposed to be the host of a local show, and Jason had won a contest. Now, I wasn't there during the day to see anything that had happened. I was just going to be able to get there in time to do the show that night. And so I did, and so I'm trying to be an MC, and I'm trying to find out who's who. And I saw Jason during one of the relaxed periods of time, again, not knowing what Tourette syndrome was, and just seeing him as probably a teenager later. I don't know how old you were, but felt way younger than I was. And I saw all this stuff going on, and he was sitting by a table with some stuff, and I just remember thinking, why is that person by themselves? Who would just set a kid back there and go, and he's going to maybe knock stuff over.
Because all the tics.
Yeah, because of the tics. I was thinking, this guy's going to knock things off. I mean, somebody should be watching him. And
Right.
and his name at that time wasn't on my list, so I didn't even know, well, what is he doing backstage? Who let him back here? But of course, I would never have said nothing, and I didn't. Other than when I'm introducing people, I have to introduce the winner of the contest, and he's going to perform his show. And so I introduced Jason Michaels, and out walked that kid.
I bet that surprised you.
I was blown away. I mean, I would have gave you first prize just for that.
Just walking out on stage successfully.
Yeah, he made it. And then when he performed, he was David Copperfield. He was Lance Burton. He had none of the tics. Everything was gone. You were perfect. You spoke great. And I swear, I mean, I know that I remember going, me and this guy's going to be friends.
Yeah.
That I'm going to get to know this kid and see what it did. And that kind of started everything off.
And you were pivotal because we became friends, and little by little over a period of, and I mean, I'm talking about over a period of years. Like, you had to do it very slowly because
it's like a little dog. I didn't want to scare you. Hey, Jason.
Yeah, you had to find a way to convince me to be that sharing my story would connect with other people.
Yeah, and I think I always thought it would make you better.
A better performer.
Yes. I mean, just to acknowledge it. And that's part of the thing that was happening on Jason's tics. Like you said, when he's doing a new show or if he's first starting out, you're never going to really see it in the show. Rarely, because again, the focus and everything. Mm-hmm. But I know when there was a period you were doing the cruise ships where you were doing the show all the time, and you're doing the same show twice a day, every day. Then it was like, okay, here we go. You're just, not that you're walking through the show. I know you weren't doing that, but you weren't concentrating as much on what I got to do. I've done it 100 times.
Right.
So I'm just going to do the same thing I did yesterday, the day before, so then the tics would show up. Mm-hmm. And my wife was one of the first ones that noticed that.
Oh, I remember the chewing gum thing.
Yeah, she said, what is he chewing? She was so mad at him because she thought he's chewing gum on stage. This is horrible. You can't do that as a performer.
I do remember that.
And So that's when I started really hitting hard that, Jason, you're going to have to start telling your story.
And I remember telling you something along the lines of, don't ever tell me that again. I am not going to do that. Like, that will never happen.
Yeah.
And so what did you do? You started inviting me to come help you. Let's use
I
that
paid
term.
for a while. I paid some.
He paid, check this out. He paid me to, quote unquote, help him come and set up and tear down the programs you were doing, because you do a lot of speaking engagements for all sorts of different types of groups. And you would say, hey, I just need help while I'm, meeting people or whatever. I need you to set up my show. But, and I needed the money, and I enjoyed our time together. But ultimately, the real reason that you did that was, I believe, is because you wanted me to see you giving your presentation so that I would start to understand why it's important to do that. And so because I remember very vividly being at a high school where you did a high school presentation for a group of high school students. And afterwards, you were swarmed by probably 8 to 10 high school students. And I was standing off, but I had seen it happen enough times. And this time it hit me. And I knew they were telling you some of their most personal, like, deepest, darkest secrets. And that's the moment that it's like a light bulb went off in my head, and I went, that's it. That's the reason he wants me to see this. Because as much as I love magic, and I've been a magician for over 25 years, I love magic. But I have never connected with an audience the way that you connect when you get completely vulnerable and share with them your own personal story of triumph over adversity or dealing with difficulty. And I saw that happen with you, and I said, okay, I get it.
Right. And that's what we're really trying to talk about, folks, is just the idea that somebody, you can overcome these things. And it did take a while for you to get to that point where you were willing to share that. But the steps that you took, that you gradually just started telling your story. I know you did a TED Talk, and they definitely ought to look that up.
Yep.
That's the whole thing.
We'll put a link to it.
And see that. But I thought that was a big turning point, because that was the story out there. And you do the straitjacket doing the story, and you've learned how to tell your story doing just that one trick now, if you need to, a shorter version of it.
Right.
And so that's kind of brought you to where you are. And I know you still perform, you still do the show without talking, and I do too.
You mean without sharing a message?
Yeah, without the message.
Yeah.
But having that message and being able to and you said it, just to overcome obstacles so often is just being vulnerable and telling people, be willing to admit that you're not everything that what everybody thinks we are or think who you are, and that we have difficulty too.
What I learned, one of the things I realized is that this is probably true for entertainers, but I know it's true for magicians, because as a magician, you and I get up on stage and we do these things that other people, they can't do, and they wonder, how is that possible? And there's a certain element of that is, like, we love it. Like, we think it's the coolest thing ever, because we remember the first time we saw magic, and we remember that feeling. But there's a certain element of that what happens when you do your magic trick is you put up a big giant wall between you and everybody else. Like, I know how this is done, you don't, and I'm not going to tell you. But even if that's not your intent, that still happens to some extent as a magician. And what happens when you tell your story is you go from being this Superman character of who can do these incredible things to being a real person.
Right.
And like, you're not just a real person, you're a real person that they've gotten to know. I did a speaking, one of the very first, so yes, two things. Number one, the TEDx talk that I did at UT Chattanooga was hugely important, because it's the first time that I really sat down, and I had kind of shared my story a little bit, because again, you had given me shows that you were not going to do, or that that you couldn't do, or that you said this would be better for Jason, you had given me some shows and said, oh, but you have to tell your story. And so I had done it some, but the TED talk was pivotal, because that's when I said, okay, this is going to be out there for the world to see, and I have to figure out how to tell my story in the most succinct way possible, and connect with people.
And to the people that are entertainment or in the entertainment business, me and Jason are not only are we different in age, we're different in a lot of things. Like, this is my notes, one thing, and this is Jason's. So Jason has written all this crap and down. And there's a big controversy, not really, but I mean, most people say Jason's script. He believes in the script, and I believe in it. I just don't do it, and I'm just not that. I'm just not that guy. I'd rather do my show 100 times than just memorize what I'm going to say. I have a script. There is no doubt in my mind I have a script. And I even had to learn when I shared my story. In the beginning, I was terrible. I told way too much, tried to show how bad I was, and that's not important. And but Jason wants to be a script, and that's what he was talking about with the TED Talk, because he had to finally go from saying it to actually writing it down, which later led to this book that you came out with.
Led to the book, yep.
Called...
the book is called You Can Do the Impossible Too.
Yeah, sounds a lot like this podcast.
Sounds a lot like the podcast. We're just sticking on a theme.
But I'm not just saying this, I highly recommend the book. It's written in such a way that every chapter ends to a point. I mean, it made me mad, because I was just going to start reading it, and I was going to make just the stuff thinking I knew everything. But he wrote it in such a great way that the end of every chapter, you almost, okay, I got to see what happened next and stuff. And the coloring doesn't take that long. That's a joke. There's not that.
There's only a few pages of coloring.
But it's worth looking. It's available on Amazon.
It's available on Amazon. You can get it through my website as well.
But it's the whole story, not only of the Tourette syndrome and stuff, and but it's available. It talked about his magic career, and the different things, and especially the underwater chamber,
the water torture cell that I did. The book was, like I said, the book was me trying to. It did two things. Number one, I wanted to leave the message out there for people to explore. But number two, it made me really dive deep into my past, so that as I was crafting the talk, I would tell the most effective stories. I would make points, the best points that I could make with things with facts that were backed up, and stories that backed up the points that I was making. That was the reason for writing. Those were two of the reasons for writing the book. And
and we have purposely left off some. We're not going in the bigger details we could with Jason's story in that because hopefully you're going to check the TED Talk out, and you're going to hear to see that. And also, if you read the book, I mean, we don't want to spoil everything. There's some great things about in the book that was very, very funny. I'm going to share. You didn't know I was going to share this, but we're going to share the chapter that should have been in the book.
The chapter that should have been in the book. Maybe the next book. Okay, what chapter is this?
This is Crazy Can Fly.
This is one of my favorite stories that you tell. This is the great story.
We were, actually Nate, my son, was starting with Armed Forces Entertainment, and he was going around and doing shows for the military, and he's done many of them. And he came to me one day and even said, "Dad, you need to go because there's so much downtime that that you have to go in the day. You see what the soldiers are doing. They kind of get to show you their life,
right?
And then you invite them to come to the show that night,
right?"
And he goes, well, as a comedian, he's going, well, what do? You can't just say, well, here's a joke. You just got to hope that they come. He said, but with your magic, you could actually do magic for them in their tents or wherever they're at, out in the middle of the desert. You could still do a trek and then make them go, wow, okay, I want to see more of that. And so Jason was the first one that started searching all of this, and we found, and he got that going, and he invited us. And on our first trip that we went, we went to the Middle East. and Djibouti.
We did. We went to
Yeah,
Djibouti.
best thing about Djibouti is just saying the word Djibouti. And, but it was fantastic. They lost my baggage and for 3 months.
That is a story we will have to tell.
It's not a happy
Yeah,
story,
that's
but
a
it
tough
really
story.
did work well. And but anyway, so I've being with Jason and traveling. You're on such a weird cycle of stuff. So you can only fly at night in the Middle East, and so you're up on you're doing your traveling at night. You're trying to sleep a little in the morning, but you got to get up early to go meet all these people and do everything. And Jason, when he gets tired and physically just worn out, and we were physically worn out, that's when the tics can really increase. Mm-hmm. So at this time, we were actually in Ethiopia, I believe, and we were going to Kuwait. And so, and we have all these baggage and stuff, whatever we had. Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry.
It's our first podcast. So we go up in line, and the lady, they just do things different there.
You're talking about the ticket counter?
The ticket counter.
At the
She
airport?
said, all right, you got 5 bags. That's going to be $200, whatever it is for your bags. And you have to go pay over there. But you leave your bags there, and then he goes over there and gets in line to pay. But no, you actually just staying in line. Nobody can come up until he pays and comes back. So it's kind of weird. So I'm just standing there, and she happens to look over, and Jason he's going through some really bad tics.
Putting on a show.
Putting on a party show. I wasn't going to say that, but yes, he was. And because again, we'd been up most of the night, and we had to walk like 2 miles to get to this place, and rain, and it was just tough. And so I look over there, and then I go, oh no, it's Tourette syndrome, and she has no idea what I'm saying.
So hold on, let me make sure I understand. She's looking at me in the other line, and she says to you,
Yeah,
what's
she's
wrong
behind the
with your
counter,
friend?
and she sees that. She goes, what's wrong with your friend?
Nice.
At first I go, nothing. We know we have to pay. I think she's talking about, is he mad he has to pay? I said, no. And then she goes, no, something's wrong with him. And back then, there was Ebola signs everywhere, and any signs of sickness, they're going to drag you off. And so so I realized what was happening, and then I go, oh, no, he's okay. It's Tourette syndrome. Where that means nothing to her. She just looks and she goes, he can't fly. And I go, what? I'm not doing this trip by myself and leaving him in Ethiopia. What happened to Jason? And so I said, no, it's okay. It's Tourette syndrome. She goes, he can't fly. Wait a minute, she goes to get her manager. So she goes back. Now they're behind the door, and I can see them talking and pointing. And
I'm still at the ticket counter?
Yeah, you're still ticking away at the ticket counter.
Ticking at the
And
ticket
so all
counter.
this happens without Jason doesn't know anything's going on. So now his manager comes over and says, sir, I'm sorry, our doctor has left for the day. He won't be back here until tomorrow at noon. Your friend will not be able to fly. And I go, no. And I'm trying to think of a way to explain what Tourette syndrome is.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of pointing at my head, going like it's up here. And I go, it's something up here. And I just happen to do this.
Like make the circle with your finger.
Yeah, which is an international sign for crazy. Because he goes, oh, okay, my brother-in-law's crazy. Crazy can fly. She told him that, and the lady goes, oh, crazy can fly. And then she went on and got the ticket and everything. I was about to die laughing, but I knew we were too tired, and I kind of thought, well, I'll just save that story for a right time and just keep it.
Apparently the right time was like 6 months later.
Once we got back, because I figured I might have to be doing this more than once. But it's my favorite story. It's just like crazy can't fly.
The coda on that is that we were playing golf like 6 months later, and you're like, I want to tell you something, but I don't think I can. And I was like, what are you talking about? I got to tell you a story, but I'm afraid you're going to get mad. I was like, what? It was great. Yeah, we have had some incredible adventures, and as the podcast goes on, we'll share a bunch of those, because we'll need stuff to talk about.
Yes, yeah. I think so. And guys, we don't want to spend too much of your time. If you have any questions that you want to get answered or anything like that, feel free. Jason will put a link here where you can text or email us some questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And anything like that, and we'll talk about anything that you guys might want to know about anything that we're doing. And thanks for hanging in there for the first one.
So I just want to, I think we should wrap up, but at the same time, I want to
Make your point.
I want to make one point because I think it's important. Like, what is a lesson that somebody can walk away with after listening to the stories and understanding some of the challenges that we all go through? Is that for me, being willing to the point that I would share is this: owning what it was that I was dealing with, being willing to say, I have Tourette syndrome, kind of like owning up to it. And instead of like ignoring it, which I did for like 30 something years, and I wasn't ignoring it, but I didn't want to acknowledge it. So being willing to say, I will give it a name, I will accept it for what it is Tourette syndrome. Just like if you're dealing with depression or suicidal thoughts or anxiety or whatever it is that you're dealing with. For me, it was saying, I have Tourette syndrome. I will accept that I have Tourette syndrome. And what happened, the moment that I did that, it was almost as if the power that I didn't have before, the control that I didn't have, now all of a sudden, like it was like flipping a switch. All of a sudden, I felt like I had control over the Tourette's. Now, granted, the tics still were exactly the same, but being willing to say, if someone made a comment to me in a grocery store when I was having tics, being willing to say, yeah, I have Tourette syndrome, all of a sudden, it made all the difference in the world.
Right. And I've seen it, and I think your talk and everything is fantastic. And of course, if anybody's interested in the corporate world or anything like that, to having Jason to come out and share about overcoming stuff, you feel free again to contact us and Jason.
And we both do. We both, as you know, as you are getting to know, we're both professional entertainers as well as professional speakers who, while our stories and our styles are wildly different, they are also very similar, and they are about empowering other people and just having fun. So your website, so if people want to reach out to you and learn more about you, is?
www, and I know I'm 65 and I'm still saying W. You don't have to do that. I understand. I don't need you to write that in the comment. Don't need to. But it's Magic of Stephen, O-F, Stephen, STEPHEN.com. And so they can find me there.
And my website is jasonmichaelsmagic.com. Stay tuned. We've got future episodes for you. We're going to have a lot more fun. It has been... Oh, wait, we forgot to do the magic trick. We almost forgot one of the important parts of our show. The show is called Do the Impossible for two reasons. Because number one, we talk about overcoming impossible challenges. But number two, we're both magicians, which means, again, we'll put these in quotation marks. We do things that are, quote unquote, impossible, or at least fun.
Yeah. We hope they had the look of impossible.
Yeah.
But we're working on doing new stuff without having to touch people as much and everything with the pandemic. And but we still need to touch things.
So you and I are going to do a magic trick together. This is one of the very first magic tricks. I fell in love with magic because I walked into a magic shop at age 16, and the guy who owned the shop was there and blew my mind. And as you know, there are certain things that a lot of magicians get started with, and this is one of these fantastic pieces that I saw a magician do, and I thought, I have to learn that trick. And while it was in the beginning of my career, within the first couple of years of learning magic, it's still one of my favorite absolute. I don't like to think of it as a beginner trick because it's not a beginning trick, but it's like, for me, it was at the beginning of my career. So it uses a deck of cards. I'm gonna have you pick a card. So reach out and take one. And now, if you're listening on the podcast, you're not going to be able to see this card, but Stephen is showing the card to the camera, and I am going to. I tell you what, I will run my thumb down the cards like so. You tell me to stop, and we'll cut the cards right there. Well, first just place it back.
On top?
Yep, right there on top. Say stop.
Stop right there.
We're going to cut it right into the center.
In the middle.
Lost in the middle of the deck. Your card lost in the middle of the pack. I'm going to lose the cards. I'm not going to hold on to the cards. There is no opportunity for sleight of hand. I'm simply going to take them and place them in a wine glass. Now, I remember seeing a magician do this. He said that it's almost as if
Oh man.
almost as if a spectral hand, like a spirit hand, grabs one card out of the deck, and it's slowly happening. You can slowly see one card rising out of the deck. The cards are
It's now
locked
more than halfway sticking out of the
inside
deck.
a wine glass, and yet is this your card, the six of clubs?
Six of clubs.
Which has risen out of the pack. One of my absolute favorite
Which is
pieces
like
of
what-
card magic.
Yeah, that's very much like what your life was. I mean, you've risen out of the pack.
Risen.
How about that?
Is that your opportunity? That's your theme for the trick.
We're gonna rise like the phoenix.
Rising like the phoenix.
I agree. That's one of my favorite all-time tricks in Magic.
Yeah,
No,
it's great.
by
It's a
far.
great piece of magic. Well, it's been a pleasure to spend this time with you guys. Tune in to the next episode. The next episode we're going to dive into the world of Stephen Bargatze and learn a little bit about your story. We're going to learn a little bit more about what makes you tick. My name is Jason
I
Michaels.
don't really tick like Jason.
Oh, that's a good. Oh, that's.
Come on, that's a good trick.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Only Rick Merrill's going to laugh at that
That's
one, but that's
right.
pretty funny.
All right.
All right, let's do it.
This
Thanks,
has been
folks.
this has been Do the Impossible. You guys have a great day. Thank you for listening to Do the Impossible with Jason and Stephen. Please subscribe for future episodes. Our home on the internet is jasonmichaelsmagic.com/podcast. That's jasonmichaelsmagic.com/podcast. To contact us, please visit the website and fill out the form. Now go out and do the impossible in your world.